Hey everyone, I am Lee Cole, President and CEO here at Breakthrough, and I just want to take this opportunity to welcome you to our Ergonomics, Keeping You Healthy at Work presentation that we've put together for. So who's this for? Well, whether you use one monitor or two monitors or three, whether you sit or stand, you're in the office or remote, whatever that is, this is for you, and certainly for your spouses, significant others, friends, family, all of those things. A little bit about me. I have been a physical therapist since 1998. I've run Breakthrough since 2004. We started it with the goal of helping people feel healthier, happier, stronger, and to navigate the healthcare system. Since COVID, we have been able to leverage that with our virtual platform. And so we're now helping people all over the world to navigate various health and wellness concerns, especially in the musculoskeletal space, Parkinson's, vestibular issues, pelvic floor, incontinence, fall prevention, adolescent sports performance and injury prevention, and things like that. It's a huge passion of ours, as well as helping moms throughout their pregnancies, planning for pregnancy, things like that. So all sorts of fun things. And as you can see, this is my family, including my beautiful wife, Christina. Thanks to her, we've been married over 20 years now. Baxter, our dog, and then our oldest, Carter, and then Katie is our daughter, and Preston. So this was a great shot that we had during some family time up at Thanksgiving. So definitely family is important, and wellness and trying to balance work and life and all of these things is a priority for me. So I hope that helps. This is obviously not intended to replace any individual assessment guidance and things like that. So if you have very specific needs, then please consult your local doctor, physical therapist, chiropractor, or certainly feel free to leverage our virtual health consultation services that I'll make available to you at the end of this presentation. So quick outline, obviously, before I can get into too much detail, we've got to get some statistics out there and basic anatomical sense, and then we'll go into sitting situations, standing, sit-stand considerations, mobile devices. I'll go through some stretching mobility. That'll be fun for you. You can get up and move around. And then nutritional considerations, and then additional ways that Breakthrough can help. So without further ado, let's get it rolling. Occupational injury statistics. Well, we all know this is a huge problem, and certainly with all of us working from home since COVID, and then moving back to the office, and people just continuously finding what that right situation is for them. Is it sitting, standing, and then also with those people with more physical jobs, obviously lifting and carrying and things of that nature affect them as well. So yeah, 60%, 32% out of these injuries are ergonomic related. 600,000 office workers miss at least one day of work due to an ergonomic injury. So that cost to a company, to their family. People are taking potentially their PTO or other time away for injury issues, doctor's appointments, things of that nature. And we want to help with that. And then the cost is just extreme, obviously, $50 billion annually. This is huge. It's something that we've got to do something about. So this presentation is one step in that direction. I don't claim to have all the solutions for everybody, that's for sure. Statistics. So lost productivity back in 2010 was 297.4 billion to 335 billion. So this is a big problem. It's been a problem for a long time, as you can see. And so again, it says, why are these chairs empty? Well, that's because people are either gone from work, or they're, workers' comp, or, having to attend to doctor's visits and things like that. So again, just kind of showing you the progression. So it's a matter of, really taking control. You can see this trend, and we've got to stop it. We got to break it. So this is something that we're here to do. So it has been shown that effective ergonomics interventions reduce musculoskeletal problems by 61%. It reduces staff turnover by 87%, and lost work days by 88%. So in general, what we see with our clients is that by investing in these services, we are able to significantly actually improve the bottom line. So with any program that we ever do, we want to make sure that every dollar, every minute is maximized for the benefit of the people around us. That's just what we're all about here at Breakthrough. So let's get into the anatomy. The spine is made up of 24 vertebrae, including the sacrum and coccyx, and then the intervertebral discs, which are the little discs, kind of like little cushions, and also help control different rotation within each vertebral segment. And then there's multiple ligaments, muscles, which aid in the stability and guiding all sorts of postural control, as well as movement, of course. So the pectorals and shoulder. So obviously, everything that we do is in front of us. So it's very important to understand that we have that we need to continually stretch out our pectorals, especially if you're one of those who works out and really does a lot of push-ups and bench work and things of that nature. We need to really focus a lot on the back muscles to help neutralize that, because everything that we're doing is so much in front of us, puts extra demand there. So we want to make sure that we're nice and loose there. Some key muscles, the latissimus and the lumbodorsal fascia. There actually is a study that was done that shows that the lumbodorsal fascia, just the connective tissue there, which intertwines all throughout the entire back, but also just fascia itself is intertwined throughout the entire body. And that fascia, specifically lumbodorsal fascia, is stronger than steel cable in some cases. So this is an incredible thing for us to all harness, and not to think about, it's just discs and muscles and ligaments, but the fascia, the connective tissue that's all in there and intertwined and helps things glide along one another. It's really important to be aware of. A lot of people I see, start to use, back braces and lumbar supports and things of this nature. But the reality is, the multifidus, and specifically the transversus abdominis, you have your own lumbar belt there. The problem is that we utilize these external devices. One, sometimes if you're lifting really heavy stuff and you want to provide that extra support, that might make sense. But the reality is most of us fail to remember how to utilize these muscles that we were built with. And so then when that happens, everything starts to crumble around it. So it's very important that we learn how to get control of our multifidus transversus abdominis and get that support for the spine to help our mobility. So key muscles in the lower extremities include the quadriceps, glutes, hamstrings, adductors, hip flexors as well. One story that I'd like to share with you from a continuing education course that I took many years ago was a story of a bunch of physical therapists who went to a program at Kaiser Hospital up in Vallejo. They had a world-renowned neurological program. So people, physical therapists would come from all over the world. They'd apply to this program. It was a 6-month program. And one of the things that they did in that program for these physical therapists, people who know about the body, know about fitness and things like that, is that they did a exercise routine in the morning. It was just kind of a team building event that they did, but also because the work that they were doing in the neuro department there was very physical. Sometimes they were dealing with people who couldn't get out of bed, or if they did, they would get up too quickly or not follow cues, again, based on neurological, stroke issues and things like that. So they weren't able to really follow directions very clearly. So you had to be very much in a good position posturally as a physical therapist. And then if someone fell, you had to catch them, type of thing. So one of the things that they did was they all held a solid squat for 5 minutes as part of that routine every single day. Well, as you can imagine, all the therapists kept complaining about it. So they said, can we take this out? This is just awful. So Kaiser said, no problem. We'll take it out, but we're going to do a survey of really how all of your backs are doing and look at posture and all of these things. They retested them 3 months later, and that was the only thing that they changed out of this program that these people had already been in. and obviously knew about posture body mechanics with the things that they were doing. And they had a 30% increase in low back pain in these physical therapists just by removing that one thing. So again, think about it. If your legs aren't strong enough, your back's going to find a way. So we end up moving and twisting and doing things just to be able to accomplish the task, but not necessarily in a way that is best for our body. And as a result, we need to really take the time to build these proper strength, flexibility in our tissues so that we're able to use the proper form and musculature with whatever task we do. So moving along, let's go over just a couple of postural things. Oftentimes we call it the Donald Duck posture or sway back position, where you have an excessive lordosis or hollowing in the back. And then again, right in through here, you can see the hollowing of the lower back. So that's that. And as a result, that's also a result of having tight hip flexors. So that's a really important thing. And especially when you're sitting all day, then your hip flexors are in that flex position. So these are muscles that then get stretched out as your hip goes into extension. And so we need to be sure that we aren't sitting all day and that we get up and move around, or that we're able to stretch out even at our desk like I'm doing now, but you probably can't see it. And then you have the Pink Panther, right? So really that kind of slouch back and just, everything's kind of sagging, bottoms tucked under type of thing. So this is a situation where we're really not using good muscular control to help hold ourselves up against gravity. And the more you do that, then gravity just keeps winning. And so you start to get compression in discs and segments and, increased pressure on your spine and pelvis and the hip joint and all of things. So then you have this militaristic posture or military posture, which is just this excessive use that we're trying to be in this perfect posture, which is not really needed and can cause excessive loading on joints, because in some cases, they hold themselves up, but they actually lock joints and type of thing. So then they're not actually using muscular control, but just using the force of bone on bone, which is not good. So what we want to find is more of a neutral spine, a happy medium. You probably try to find that in your own life every day, maybe even today. And so it's just a constant effort that all of us have to make. Myself, teaching this stuff all the time. Of course, I'm not in perfect posture at any time, but I'm able to realize when I'm starting to slouch or I'm excessively lordotic or my Donald Duck or Pink Panther or whatever, or if I'm starting to get different aches and pains, that I'm able to be more in tune with what that is. And so I'm able to then make some changes, increase my stretching routine, increase some strengthening, and focus on those areas. So hopefully this will be helpful for that. So proper mechanics with your daily activities. So ADLs is activities of daily living, which is very common in the medical community. So that's a good term for you to know. Hip hinging. So bending from the hips while maintaining natural curves in the cervical, thoracic, and lumbar spine. So we don't want to be bending, from our back and things of that nature. We want to have a nice, smooth transition where you basically have a hinge through your hip joint, and so that you're moving around that. So symmetrical weight bearing. We don't want people hanging out on one leg versus another, or kicking their hip out, type of thing where you're, sitting like this or locking a knee, and just kind of hanging out in this situation. We don't want to do that. And then again, just to kind of show you that hip hinging is really, almost imagining like you've got a bar on your back and that you're just moving straight forward, hinging from the hip. So that's just a hip hinge. So proper squatting, right? Bending from the hips instead of bending from the back and things like that. Utilizing that squat form that I talked about earlier is really critical. Otherwise, you're going to load other segments, potentially stretch your shoulders out if you're lifting something really heavy, things like that. So we want to make sure that we're trying to maintain as much symmetry as possible there. So let's get into the sitting workstation. This is a very old picture, as you can see, with the monitors that were being used back in the day and computer setup. But it also is interesting for me because I still see people kind of going through this process through the day in different Zoom sessions that I'm in. personal, just looking at people, but also just talking to them, how they feel, right? So maybe this is a little bit of exaggeration over here on the far right. But certainly there's many days that people do feel this way. And then, what position do they put themselves in to do that? So important to see. So sitting workstation with a monitor and keyboard, you want to really be careful that you're not getting into that forward head posture. You want to make sure that your thoracic spine muscles are working, that you're reducing your hip flexion. So you're keeping your hips in a little bit greater than 90-degree position typically in terms of that flexion. And then we want to make sure that our shoulders aren't internally rotated in the short pecs that I mentioned earlier. And then also the hamstrings. The hamstrings get shortened if you have excessive knee bending. So some of those chairs where you're like almost kneeling or something like that can be really detrimental over a long period of time, because it really puts an excessive shortening on the hamstrings, pressure on the knee joints and shin, and some of those tissues. So that can be potentially beneficial for certain periods of time, but not by rule as it's a good situation. So sitting workstation, a lot of what we do here at Breakthrough in terms of our ergonomics evaluations is to try to not be too focused on, just all the very specifics, because I shouldn't say not focused on all the specifics, but to try to be in tune with each individual in line with some of the key parameters that research has shown us, over the years. Because again, different individuals are in different work situations. They have a different variety through the whole day. And a lot of times ergonomics evaluations are based on one position. And the reality is that we're going to be encouraging you to not be in that one position all the time. So we're going to give you tips and tricks for how to keep moving while you're at your desk, as opposed to, okay, you need to get your eyes set 24 inches from the monitor and you have to be here and you have to do this. So we're going to give you those tips, but we also are very flexible in terms of helping people work the way that they want to work and giving them opportunities to really find what works for them, setting them up for the long haul, and also just being that continued support, as opposed to, I had a ergonomic evaluation 5 years ago and it helped, but then I shifted jobs and so it doesn't really matter anymore. Or technology has changed so that some of the things I learned doesn't really help. So back here, I find that this little wedge in the picture on the right is really helpful because it kind of helps set up the pelvis in a good position. So there are some chairs on the market that do that, and we potentially set your incline for that. Also, sometimes even not necessarily in the workstation, but going on trips, planes, or sitting in a movie theater, or going to a sporting event, or the theater or something of that. Taking a sweatshirt or a towel or something like that, and putting it underneath your sit bones could be a really great option to help kind of tilt the pelvis in a successful position, make it easier for you to not have to use so much muscle work to support it. So with the hands and wrists, anytime that we're starting to really move and twist and things like that, or be in too much flexion or extension, that can be really bad. So there are plenty of different options out there with keyboards and mice, split keyboards, and tracking devices, roller devices, things of that nature. And so there are going to be continuously more and more of these put out there. But the key is that we want to really maintain a neutral position with our wrists and hands. And so whatever creates that ability for you to do so is good. The split keyboard situation can be good in theory. I don't find that a lot of people really end up using it. It's not quite as practical, along with them, they're a little bit more clunky when they just go to use their laptop or something of that nature. But certainly, reaching and splitting and, alt tab and control and all of these multiple functions, especially with programmers who have all sorts of coding that they're doing, which have these different things. So you just want to really be aware that you're not creating that, but that you might be hitting it, with both of your hands or something, as opposed to trying to do the maximal amount and cover the maximum amount of territory by reaching and twisting. We don't want to do that. So sitting workstation, again, there's so many different places that people work and sit and theories as to what's going on. So again, in this first one, it's interesting. She's, on this really cool device, that's got the gym ball and allows her to move and things like that. But how's she using it, right? She's all hunched over in that forward head posture, leaning on her elbows and things like that. So, a device like that, it doesn't matter, right? You spend $1,000 on a chair or whatever, but if that's how you're going to use it, then, is that really worth it? So a lot of people don't have to spend a lot of money, and their companies don't have to spend a lot of money on getting proper stuff or the best ergonomic equipment, because oftentimes people end up using it like this. So that's kind of where we come in, is to show you how to do that. Same thing here with this guy on his tablet, hunched over. That's fine. If he's going to maybe be actively stretching out that left hip, that might be an option while he's there. But maybe he's probably better off just taking 5 minutes stretching out his hip and then getting back into that position. And then, of course, the beanbag scenario, we've all been there, but that just puts a lot of stress on the neck. So we think we're nice and comfortable, but he's having to hold his head up. That's causing, even more rounding of the shoulders and tightness in here to, maintain. Otherwise, he's going to fall back against gravity. And the same thing can often happen with people who are working on the couch or working in bed or something like that. So all sorts of different ways that people do it, and they say that they're super comfortable and, all the things. So we've seen it all, maybe not all, but a lot of it. And we'll continue to see more. So happy to help you with that. So a lot of times we talk about, musculoskeletal problems, but the reality is there's a lot of other things that can really become problematic if you're not in the best possible ergonomic situation. So, headaches, blood clots and things like that. Lungs, right? You can get, clotting and things of that nature if you're too stagnant for too long a period of time and you're not balancing it with some exercise and stretching and things like that. Arms, reduction of physical activity there. People can develop, stomach problems and, obesity and things like that. And then also just the general lack of proper metabolism and things of that nature. Certainly a lot of people that have shifted to, pure standing situations and they swear by it, or, maybe even standing with a treadmill or something like that. There's a balance, right? So I think it's not necessarily key that, there's a magic bullet one way or the other, that you got to be standing all the time or sitting all the time. I think the human body was meant to move. The computer was developed by us. And so it didn't take into all the considerations that are really needed. And so it's just something that you want to make sure that it's not driving you, that you're driving it. And then again, different heart issues and leg and obviously back. So making those adjustments is really important. So again, from an ideal standpoint, current recommendations are that you're, 18 to 24 inches away, depending on different vision scenarios or the glare of your computer. So there's certain variability there. Your elbow, 70 to 135 degrees of flexion, so that you want that space. And then also just greater than 90 degrees of hip flexion, where the angle between your trunk and your thigh is just greater than 90 degrees. And then also at your knee, where you're, not tighter than 90 degrees, but kind of like between 90 and 125 degrees of flexion, that internal angle there. If you're shorter than 90, then those hamstrings are going to be unnecessarily shortened. Same thing with the hip flexors, where the trunk meets the legs, is if that angle is less than 90, then your hip flexors are going to be really tight. So that's a problem. Correct. Sitting posture. Again, people have, 2 monitors, 3 monitors. They might have 2 different workstations, so it's different in different situations. So we want to be aware of that and figure out, which is the primary monitor that you're looking at. One of the other things too is, if you're going to be working on this monitor in front of you, then you should be facing it and really sitting up properly and using your legs and all of these things. And being able to really turn and try to be present in most cases. So then if she's moving all the way to that left monitor, she should be rotating her chair, maybe moving the keyboard with her, really focusing there. And so it's just important, depending on the kind of work that you're doing and how you're moving things around. Again, that's where having an expert come in, even virtually, you can kind of talk through these things and strategize how that can just be more efficient for you, or, finding some shortcut keys and things of that nature. The other difference is If you have a corner situation, is it rounded or is it squared off? Do you have a keyboard tray or what's going on there? So again, not only posture, but just your position with it, or maybe if you're going to reach, for your printer, are you just reaching like this type of thing, or are you actually using your legs moving forward, and moving back and really, being able to kind of move a little bit more athletically while you're at your desk. We don't want anyone to get into the fetal workstation, but this is also just kind of a little funny slide that we found where we don't want people crumbled up because you didn't adhere to any of these things. And again, it's not just the equipment that you have, but how you use it, right? I think that's one of the biggest things. So let's move into standing. One of the key considerations I like to point out in this slide is that when you move into a standing situation, you got to make sure that then your laptop or your desk and monitor and things are keyboard are adjusted to your height. So now he's moved into this standing situation, but look at how much lower his monitor is than where hers is. And hers is, in a pretty good position based on what we've gone through previously. So you can see, just the stress that that's going to cause over time on his neck, and he's going to start to get more rounded and things like that. So no surprise that he'd start to have some neck pain, maybe even some headaches, rounding of the shoulders, things of that nature, because everything just has to go down to be able to see what's happening. So while standing can be good, this situation is really not good at all. So it's a matter of making sure that those things are moving forward with you. So with a standing situation, certainly some considerations, are that you have a soft mat, and there's some different ones now that have some vibration to them. So there's all sorts of different options that are available and will continually evolve with us. Sometimes having a footrest can be good, but the key there is if you're doing that, and then you don't want to be shifting your weight onto the hip that's not there, and you want to, not always have one foot up. You've got to be able to spend equal time and maybe utilize that as a good opportunity to develop some strength in your primary leg that you're standing on. But again, that's not going to be posture that's going to be sustainable for significant periods of time. And certainly if it is, you're going to start to have some vascular issues to be concerned of, and stretching and things like that. So we want to be arm's length away at about 24 inches still. So anti-fatigue mats can help. Footrest can be of assistance. And then if you have an adjustable seat or stool that you can, use, sometimes that's nice to be able to have, so that you can kind of bounce back between kind of a low sitting position, a high sitting position, and standing. Sometimes it's a little bit clunky, especially if you do have a mat there. Then you've got to worry about moving your chair away and, not tripping over it and things like that, or having it, roll off the mat. Does it come onto the mat easily? Is it a big enough mat? So all of these things are considerations. So you have, again, over here on the right, here is a different option of a high-low or sit-stand station where, when he's in the sitting position, he's got it set up in a way where the monitor is just way too high for him. The table is too high for him because the platform that he's got it on is not good. And then, he's moved it up into a standing position, and he's super rounded, really hunched over. You can see his neck is not in a great position, and the monitor's probably still a little bit on the high side, I would say. So this is something that's continuing. So again, he's got this nice ability to, get up and down, but he hasn't solved any problems. So any, benefit that he's telling his friends and family is probably mostly placebo, and the fact that he is just getting up and down. So there are just innate benefits there, but in general, he needs some help, so to speak. So they have this. Mobile devices and laptops and travel considerations. So mobile devices, it's really important. I'm on my kids quite a bit about this. As you could imagine, they are currently 17, 16, and almost 14 in a couple weeks here. So, but studies have shown that the head, right, in a 60-degree flex position, similar to what we would have probably seen here with this gentleman over time, is that it increases the weight of your head, which is about 10 or 12 pounds, uh, significantly up to like a 60-pound weight. So that's then that much more weight that all these muscles in the back have to hold to try to keep up. Or it helps, or it causes us to hunch over, and then we have to look up, and then you have excessive, cervical compression and extension and things like that that can really lead to problems. The other thing too is that if you think about, at the neck, if these muscles are really shortened, no surprise that you're going to get some different headaches and things like that. Whereas if you're up in a more upright posture, then you're going to have just a lot more control and ability to do things and function. So really important to be aware of that. Oops, I want to go back to text claw. So yeah, text claw is a common thing where you're holding on, especially if you're doing it one-handed, where you're holding on here and doing this with the thumb. One key thing, and you can see kind of the red highlight there a little bit around the thumb of this individual. You should know that our thumbs count for 90% of hand function, right? Opposable thumbs. This is an amazing gift. Don't lose it. Don't throw it away. And over time, like, we find, that we're fine with it now, but who knows what it's going to be 10 years from now. So utilizing some of the, talk to text features, swipe, phenomena, I think is often helpful. Certainly using two hands, all sorts of different tools are good, but, getting into this, multiple hand and just, all thumbs type of thing can be bad. And certainly if you're trying to do it one-handed and navigate, because again, it just forces you into that reaching situation that I talked about earlier with the keyboard where you're, reaching and dividing and all of those things. So you want to be very careful of those things. Laptops, again, whether you're traveling, maybe you're sitting at the airport or, hotel room or, anywhere in between. In general, it's great if you can have, some sort of adjustment to bring the monitor up to the proper height so that you're not all hunched over there. Having an external keyboard can be helpful as long as you're not having to manage too many devices in too many places. And then really trying to get, in the best, possible situation. Again, be careful, if you're, kicking back and things like that, because then you can see this guy's head is coming forward, kind of like the one on the beanbag that I showed you earlier. Having your feet up and things, but then also, really trying to hold yourself up in a good posture as opposed to allowing yourself to just be slumped over. So, being in that position and trying to keep some of those principles with the hip hinging, making sure that your thoracic spine isn't getting into too much of a thoracic kyphosis or rounding there, and that you're in a good position for that. So laptops and travel continued. Again, you can kind of see this maybe a little bit more clearly, with the shoulders hunched, rounded back and the chin's going forward, screens, way too low. So that's there. And so you need to really be aware of that. Or if you are going to be forward, obviously, sometimes that's just the position that we've got for a certain period of time. And that's fine, right? So it's not so are you saying that I can't use my laptop type of thing, or I'm going to die? No, that's not what I'm saying. I think it's just a matter of being aware of that, how long we're spending there. As you can see, kind of in the one on the right, he's got his feet flat on the floor. They use a footrest if necessary, if I'm honest. This was one of the best pictures I could come up with, but I'm not a huge fan of kind of using that situation with the footrest, excuse me. I find that it's better to scoot forward in your chair, especially if you're have shorter legs or something like that. But sometimes, even still, you need to get something underneath you to connect you to the ground, because the more that you can have kind of what I call a tripod sit situation, where both feet are on the ground and you're actually supporting some of your weight there, as well as some of your weight in your pelvis or your sit bones, that's really important. So if you kind of look at those points of contact and utilize them for support, so that not all of the weight is going through your sit bones, your spine, or exiting out your lower back. Again, if I'm slouching, then some of that effort and things are getting kind of pushed out of the back that we don't want. So we just want to be aware of that. So stretching and mobility. Let's get up and move it around a little bit. Um, so a few different things here. Let's move this out of the way. Sorry about that. I'll adjust here a little bit. Okay, so one is the active leg swing, right? So it's just kind of, if you need a chair or wall for support, then feel free to utilize that. The key is with whatever leg that you're going to stand on. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of swing my right leg here, which means I'm standing on the left leg. So I'm going to turn and face you. Make sure that you're not kicking your hip out. So that hip hinging that I talked about a ways back, we do want this kind of hip hinging when you're, bending forward type of thing where you're, hinging from the hips, but we don't want a hip hinging this way where you're just pushing that out. And then the pelvis drops, kind of throws, excessive pressure onto this hip joint and all the spinal segments up above it, along with probably your knee. And so you want to be really solid on that stance leg as you swing forward and back. Again, if you're sitting a lot of the day, then you're in this position, so your hip flexors are tight. So one of the big goals with that leg swing is you're trying to get, not only just a big kick here, but also really get back into good hip extension without your back having to instantly go into extension. So as you go into hip extension, if you don't have proper hip extension and it forces you to have to arch your back, then you're not really getting the hip extension out of your hip. It's coming from your back. So that's kind of where a virtual assessment or one-on-one with a physical therapist can help you, really figure out what's going on so that you can get nice and good motion in through there. Same thing on the other side. That can also show this to you, kind of moving forward where you're, creating just some nice open, some counter rotation you can certainly create from the upper body, things of that nature. So standing calf and hamstring stretch. So let's go with the calf stretch first. So you could be up against the wall. I'm going to skip the wall for purposes here, and then leaning forward. And the key is that there's two different stretches here. One where your back knee stays straight. And so that's a better way to be able to get your gastrocnemius muscle that also crosses the knee joint. So it's important to know that you've got a few calf muscles. The primary ones are the gastrocnemius and the soleus. Gastrocnemius crosses the knee joint. So if the knee is flexed, then it kind of takes the gastroc out, and now you're stretching more the soleus. So as soon as you bend your knee a little bit, you probably feel that more towards your Achilles or your lower leg, just above your ankle, as opposed to here where you're going to start to feel it kind of more in the muscle belly. And then the key here sometimes for people is they have to just kind of, get a little bit lower, really make sure you're keeping your heel flat, make sure that you're not arching your hips and things like that, because that can start to make some changes as well. The hamstring stretch, honestly, I prefer to do it in this way where I've got a chair that I'm able to put it on. Now, whatever you can do there, ideally it doesn't, for most people, especially us guys, it doesn't have to be much above the knee. So you don't have to get your leg way up there. Some people who are more flexible, certainly they have different situation. But again, we don't want you, hinging with the hips. We want you nice and solid on your leg. Don't lock your knee. If you need a support with something in your room, I'm currently doing this on a moving chair, which is probably not the best idea, but I feel comfortable enough to do so. So I'm not recommending that you do that on an unstable surface that moves and twists. But just for demonstration purposes, this was the easiest thing for us to be able to do today. So here, and then the key is just kind of pressing your chest forward, and then you feel that pulling through the hamstring pretty quickly in my case, because I've been sitting all day. So that's kind of the deal there. You can also certainly do it like the lady is in this picture. I find for most people, it's hard to get much of a stretch in that situation, but up on a curve or something like that can be good. So let's move into the adductor stretch, kind of inner thigh. And again, here, the key as you try to stretch out, my right adductors here, the inner muscle on the thigh, make sure you're not leaning into the opposite knee, putting pressure in there. You really kind of want to be, pretty much in the same, in that frontal plane where you're just kind of in that position. So sit down into your opposite hip that you're not stretching, in this case, my left hip, and then being able to feel that stretch here. One other way that oftentimes people will feel their stretch a little bit more is if they reach up, you can potentially add a little bit of a, sideways bend, just to make sure that you're not, bending inappropriately. You're really thinking about reaching up nice and high, taking some nice deep breaths, things of that nature. And then obviously switch to the opposite side. Same thing if you're going to stretch out, reach up and above, like so, for some added stretch. And then the hip adduct or hip flexor stretch. This is actually the one that I was doing when I was talking about it from the chair. So in this case, right, you can be in this position and bringing that hip behind you, just like he is. So here in this position, if you wanted to, you can even turn the chair sideways a little bit, might give you another option. And again, here you're just kind of keeping your abdominals engaged so that you can feel a pull through the front of the thigh, making sure that your back isn't arching. So you want to kind of keep the pelvis tucked under you and get the hip to go backwards without your back pulling. So oftentimes people will say, oh, I don't feel it at all. That must mean I'm not tight. And the reality is probably they're so tight that they don't even know how to get there, that their back just kicks in before they can even know. So that's a consideration to have. Otherwise, sometimes I find that it just takes a little bit more one-on-one instruction and guidance. Sometimes you have to be in person so that your physical therapist working with you can really feel what's going on and see it. Maybe give you some tactile cues with their hands to help make it happen. Put it together with actually physically stretching you themselves so they can actually feel the tissues and control that. So a lot of different options depending on what's going on there. The other one that I think is really simple way to do the hip flexor stretch is just in a standing position. So again, kind of tucking those hips underneath you and then trying to feel that pull through the front. I find that to be super helpful. So those are the main ones that we're going through with the lower body today. Let's take a look at the upper body. So shoulder overhead reach. So you can kind of hold on to one side of the chair and reach up and above. Again, it's not just collapsing over, right, and reaching. Really think about elongating everything on the right side of your body, as is the case for me, and reaching up and coming to the side and feeling it here. So just kind of getting that, or coming this way. Think about being nice and tall. Take some nice, slow, deep breaths. For most stretches, all the ones I just went through with you for the low back, I recommend about 6 slow, deep breaths. That's about how long it takes for oxygen to get to the tissues, for your muscles, for the brain to receive the message that your muscles are trying to stretch, and for it to kind of shut down some of those things that are holding it back and to allow some blood flow to that area. The other thing would be, just kind of reaching, towards a wall type of thing, and then allowing yourself either, this stance and coming down. So maintaining your hands up there nice and tall, coming down so you can kind of feel a nice stretch through probably the lumbar spine, lumbodorsal fascia, things like that. For the wrists and hands, this is kind of one of the most common or easy ones to do here. So you should feel this stretch kind of through the front, through your wrist flexors. You can also then move into stretching out the wrist extensors in this way. Again, you want to be nice and solid there. Be sure that you're in good position with the shoulder, so it's not torqued too far forward. And then you can just feel, again, just a nice long arc through there for the wrist extensors. The other thing is the shoulder shrug, or shoulder circles. So coming up and around and then down and back. One of the key things that I find is really important, that honestly I need to do a little bit more work on myself, is really bringing the shoulders down and back. So it's almost like thinking about taking those shoulder blades and squeezing them together. What I usually tell my patients and clients, it's like you're squeezing a $1 million bill between your shoulder blades, and you don't want anyone to take it. So you want to really get that back, which is going to help you get a little bit more stretch through the pectorals, through some of the anterior neck muscles, and really get control through the shoulder blades, which not only helps set up the neck for success, but also the shoulders. You can imagine if my shoulder blade and the thoracic spine is rounded, it's going to be hard for me to move my shoulder properly. So this is really important. It can, change breathing habits, things like that. One quick tip, I know we talked about other ways how, posture, and ergonomics and things will affect the lungs, but just real quick, since we're talking about it, go ahead and take a deep breath in, get into a really slouch position and try to take a deep breath in. Right? It's kind of like taking a breath through a straw. Then go ahead and put yourself up in this position, squeeze those shoulder blades back, and then take a nice slow deep breath. Right? And it's just a very different situation. So again, that's what's happening, right, with your lungs and your rib cage, thoracic spine, shoulder girdle, scapula, all of those different things is really important. So again, just kind of coming up and around and then squeezing down and back. And then the last one we have here is just a pectoral stretch through a doorway. And you can do this both hands or just one at a time. And if I'm honest, I think doing one at a time is better. So just kind of putting one hand up as if I was in a threshold or against a wall or something like that. And then I typically am taking my left foot. So if I've got my right hand, I got my left foot forward, and then I'm rotating away, trying to open that up. In some cases, I'm actually actively trying to contract or utilize my scapular muscles to pull that back as I rotate through, and then same thing on the other side. So left arm up, right leg forward, and then rotating away so that you've got that pull through there. Otherwise, you can certainly go into a doorway. Just don't lean into and put excessive stress, onto the shoulder joints and things of that nature. Really make sure that you're keeping a good upright posture. Try to ensure that you are breathing properly and things like that. So, and then just a postural stretch. We talked about that forward head position quite a bit today and how that makes tightness into here. So one of the biggest things that's probably most common, and if you've ever been to physical therapy for neck issues, probably this is the thing you get is this chin tuck where you're kind of making a double chin. So if you've been to therapy, you can go ahead and laugh at me, but this is one of the ones that we use all the time, and it's for a reason. But again, you can't be in a poor posture and then try to do this. You've got to really set everything up from the ground up. And that's something that, our therapists really, really teach here and work on, is to keep those shoulder blades back and then be able to pull that chin back. And it's just like kind of sliding it through, like a drawer. You're kind of almost even thinking about like you've got a wire, almost pulling you kind of up and back type of thing as you do it, right? So you're just kind of in here and then being able to take some deep breaths. I'm starting to get comfortable with that. So that's just something to do throughout the day. And then postural stretches, so different trunk rotations and things like that. So let's get into nutrition. Is not my number one area of focus, but we want to be comprehensive, and these are some key areas that we do feel very comfortable to share with you. More fruits and vegetables, whole grains, lean proteins, and healthy fats. Right, pretty self-explanatory there. You've probably seen that before. And working with a nutritionist or dietitian, on some of these things. Also, in general, and I certainly have found my challenges over the years, different times where, I would not eat. And the reality was I was actually gaining weight while not eating, because everything I would eat, my body would just store it as fat. So then it was just a mess. And I find the people who are eating smaller meals more often through the day, one, they're just in general a bit more fit and active and probably have a better metabolism and energy level. They're probably doing other things in their life that are also more healthy along those lines. But yeah, don't skip meals. And the more that you can fit in some of those smaller meals, it's going to keep your blood sugar levels more consistent, help your focus, make your workday go a little bit faster, feel more productive. So who knows, maybe you can do more in less time, which is never a problem for any of us, I think. Have healthy options wherever you go, whether it's in your car, at your desk, at your house. Careful to stay away from the junk stuff. Stay hydrated, right? We want to make sure that you're drinking, what is it, 6 to 8 8-ounce glasses of water, every single day. So really, continuing to hydrate probably more than you think you should. Seldom do I find people overhydrate. And then move, right? So if you are back at the office, take the stairs, do some squats at your desk, go through these stretches that we've just gone through. If your water bottle's, empty, go take the opportunity, go and refill it. The more you refill it, the more often that you might have to go to the bathroom. Go ahead and stretch, really, stride out when you're, walking around and things like that. So utilize that as good, breaks that you're almost forced to have by actually taking care of yourself. So I hope these tips and tricks are helpful. And then here's just some other ways that Breakthrough helps people all over the world. So we develop customized HR programs for HR departments for different benefits, health and wellness and ergonomic evaluations for onboarding, ongoing situations, trying to prevent people from being out of the office unnecessarily, helping them just to be, more successful, more productive, save money and time on medical appointments, help them navigate the medical system, trying to help them not, get to the right doctor. So, for example, someone might have, like a 14-year-old daughter who's having knee pain. So rather than calling the pediatrician, we might suggest that you call the orthopedist and then have the orthopedist report back to the pediatrician, or go straight to a physical therapist. A lot of people don't realize you have direct access to physical therapists. So through one of the virtual sessions, we might be able to help you figure that out, help you find a good physical therapy group close to you within your network, or potentially even going out of network, because we've learned that a lot of times when people go in network to a hospital-based facility, they will spend a lot more, 3 to 5 times more than they would pay by going out of network to a private clinic. And I certainly had that issue years ago when I had to get a sleep study for my CPAP. Again, I told you that my wife is amazing and has dealt with me for over 20 years. Well, married for over 20 years, so she's dealt with me for even more than that. But to be able to get, go through a sleep study, and that was just a whole scenario that, because I knew all the questions to ask, I was in a good situation and prevented, really significant expenses based on a hospital-based facility as opposed to a private facility. So that applies for, orthopedics and sleep studies and all sorts of specialists. So it's good to be able to know that. We do lunch and learns on different topics such as, ergonomics, injury prevention in your adolescent athlete, healthy pregnancy, fall prevention, vestibular, pelvic floor situations, Parkinson's, all these different things. So always happy to help there. Physical therapy. If you're local here, we are in Sunnyvale, California, so in the north Silicon Valley. So if you're here, then we do 40-minute sessions and things like that. Otherwise, virtually we do 25 and 50-minute sessions for people for different reasons, and our care team is more than happy to kind of help you figure out what the right solution is for you. And even if it's not with us, then we're happy to kind of get you in the right location. It's really truly about collaborating with you and helping you navigate the system and get to your goals, get from wherever you are to wherever you want to be as quickly and cost effectively as possible. Our medical system is certainly in need of help. I can't fix it, but our goal is to help where we can. And then we have wellness and sports performance programs for people of all ages. So customized plans to really help people get to that next level. So people who don't need medically necessary physical therapy services, then we are able to see them with their health and wellness goals. And ideally, one, to really get to their big goals, but two, to help keep them out of the medical system. So really a true preventive, all-encompassing, comprehensive approach that we've got. And then HR consulting. Because of our experience, because of all the different HR professionals I work with, business owners, executives, our team is able to develop these custom programs for them. We've been able to work with some great groups. We actually just shifted our 401k plan last year, and it's saving us a ton of money and time. And so that's been super helpful for us. I'm happy to get anyone in your HR department connected with great groups of people there. If you're looking to figure out best ergonomic equipment and things like that, we don't typically monetize that, but I'm happy to be a resource for you on any level to make sure your onboarding process is smooth and the people on your team really know that you care about them.